Well, to get started, COVID-19 has placed numerous hardships on CCRA in 2020. However, past President Kathy Garrick, the CCRA board, has plowed on, and membership continues to grow. We're 3,000 plus strong. So we look forward to 2021 continuing that. I am fired up to join with this current board and staff to get us rolling in 2021. Hopefully by late summer, we can go to in-person events again at some level. We'll just have to wait and see. We're getting guidance on that from the state and NAR. So we'll watch that and hopefully see some improvement there. I want you to know that I truly believe in being a realtor and what realtor stands for. In these difficult and changing times, our alliance is as important as it's ever been. In the past few years, CCRA, NAR, SCR, and RPAC have protected and even saved our industry. If you think about a few of those things, mortgage interest was saved, flood insurance program extended, realtors were pronounced as an essential service during the pandemic. The CARES Act included realtors as independent contractors to qualify for unemployment and PPP, just to name a few things, not to mention some of the local issues that are going on now. So again, I'm so glad that to be a realtor and thankful that we are all realtors protecting our industry. With growing digital and electronic and internet capabilities, our industry will continue to see much change, and I look forward to being a part of that change. Let us remember that realtors do not only sell homes, we're commercial realtors and property managers as well, and we will strive to meet the needs of all of our membership. I hope you'll join me in making, and I mean making, 2021 a year in our history that CCRA is realtor proud. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Kim.
Thank you, President Steve Taylor. I'm Taylor Oxendine, Co-Executive Officer of CCRA. In addition to what the President said about our realtor membership, also wanted to recognize all of our affiliate members. You make it possible for us to host events throughout the year, from membership meetings to our economic forecast and our golf tournament. Your cooperation is essential to our membership. We know COVID-19 prevented us from fully engaging with you in 2020, but thank you for your continued support of our association. Moving on, I just want to introduce our 2021 Board of Directors to you, our membership. First, our directors, Becky Ashby, Diane Bonnell, Micah Collins, Jennifer Feliciano, Michael Lucas, Candace McEwen, Janelle Mitchell, and Alan Wilkerson. Our executive committee is Kathy Garrick, ex officio, Henry Rowe, Commercial Division Director, Jim Broach, Secretary, John Smith, President-elect, and of course, Steve Taylor, our President. We appreciate all their service to our association. I also want to recognize the CCRA representatives on the South Carolina Association of Realtors Board of Directors, Matt Carroll, Sally Chester, Kathy Garrick, Joe Katzenberger, Dan Lang, Tony Nally, Deb Storin, Steve Taylor, and our lifetime members, Laura Derrick, Janine Keys, David Lockwood, and Andy Walker. Charles Kaufman will return to serve as Region 5 Vice President. Charles, along with Alan Wilkerson and Todd Beckstrom, who will serve as Commercial Representative and Legal and Ethics Group Chair, respectively, will all serve on the SCR Executive Committee. In addition, my counterpart, Kim Fuller, will represent all of the local association executives on the Executive Committee as AE Chair. And of course, we're all proud that our former CCRA President, Morris Lyles, is your current 2021 SCR President. Finally, Todd Beckstrom will also continue to serve as CCRA's representative on the National Association of Realtors Board of Directors. In addition to serving as NAR Director for CCRA, Todd also serves on the NAR Professional Standards Committee and was a key part in a significant change to the Code of Ethics. Today, Todd will speak about new rules regarding Article 10 of the Code and how that will affect the association and you as a member. Welcome, Todd.
Thanks, Taylor. It's been my pleasure to serve not only on the NAR Board of Directors, but also the State Board of Directors as Legal and Ethical Chair, Group Chair this year, and of course on National Professional Standards. We made a very important change to the Code of Ethics. Back in June of this year, we were tasked by the leadership team at NAR to take a look at the code because we were seeing so many violations that were coming in with discriminatory practices outside real estate transactions against the protected classes. And as you know, Article 10 is basically our fair housing. And we're 7 protected classes plus gender identification and sexual orientation in terms of the Code of Ethics. So in looking at it, we met early June, about 100 of the professional standards national committee members met virtually beginning in June, tasked with trying to figure out what we needed to do. The first thing we did was we had to change policy statement 29, which basically says that the Code of Ethics only apply inside the real estate transaction. What we were seeing, and we were seeing it with heavy hearts on social media, on videos that were posted by agents, with racial epithets and slurs, and it was awful, folks. I mean, we listened to 5 Black leaders from across the country talk about their experience in real estate and the discrimination against them from not only fellow realtors, but from their clients. And it kind of broke our hearts to think that this was still going on. We knew we had to raise the professionalism, that we couldn't very well go out and serve these protected classes day after day with their real estate needs and then talk about them that way on social media and in the public. So we came back after 6 months, late in the year this year, made some recommendations to the Code of Ethics. Specifically, Standard of Practice 10-5 was added. And let me read it to you. It says, realtors must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, slurs based on race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. All right, so it says we must not use it. It doesn't say inside the real estate transaction. We also recommended that the definition of public trust be expanded to include all discrimination against protected classes under Article 10 of the Code of Ethics and all fraud, which it previously said as well. And then the final change that we recommended and was passed by the Board of Directors, whereas in instances where the public trust or discrimination had occurred, we have an obligation to report that to the state authorities and federal authorities to deal with it. I couldn't be prouder to serve on that committee to make those recommendations to raise the bar of professionalism across the real estate industry. Morris, in his opening prayer, talked about the golden rule, and it's very appropriate here. If we practice that, we don't have a problem. One of the things that I'd like you to understand, and I'm going to compare it to myself here, every single person on this is in a protected class. Think about it, folks. Every single person out there has a race. Every single person has a color. Every single person has a sexual orientation. Every single person has a familial status. As we go down the list, we're in multiple protected classes, okay? So that golden rule just really comes into apply. And I'd like to point out that we didn't do this to take away anybody's freedom, their freedom of speech or anything. And I can go into that in detail, but I won't. We went in it to increase professionalism, to protect the realtor brand and to protect the public. So thanks to everybody out there. Just wanted to keep you up to date on the code. Thank you for allowing me to serve the association, both locally at the state level and nationally. It's a pleasure. If any of you ever have questions, I'm wide open. So just let me know. Thank you for your time. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I couldn't have done that good of a job.
Todd, we'll definitely let you know if there's some questions that come about. Thank you so much for the update.
Thanks, Kim.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kim Fuller, and I'm Co-Executive Officer of CCRA. Before we hear from our special guest today, I wanted to remind everyone to sign up for the SCR Virtual Capital Conference on February 9th and Wednesday, February the 10th. There's a link in the chat box to register for this event. This fun and informative legal, legislative, and RPAC conference will offer game show theme meetings such as the Candidating Game, Is It Legal, and Who Wants to Be an RPAC Investor. There will also be a legislative panel, political insiders, fundraising breakout session, and even Governor McMaster and Senator Tim Scott. If you have ever had any questions about what is RPAC and what does RPAC do for me, this is definitely the meeting to attend. Now we will hear from our guests from the South Carolina Association of Realtors. SCR is instrumental in advocating for your industry at the State House, Real Estate Commission, and before other nonprofit associations and through NAR. Please join me in welcoming our first speakers, Lindsay Jackson, Chief Advocacy Officer, Byron King, Senior VP and General Counsel, and Austin Smallwood, Director of Legal and Regulatory Affairs.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kim. And good morning, everyone that's on the call this morning. I really just want to thank Kim and Taylor and Steve for inviting us to talk a little bit more about what's going on at the state level. Y'all have a great board, great leadership, and I always look forward to speaking to this group, though I hate we can't be in person doing this. But I wanted to jump right into a quick legislative update for y'all. It's that time of the year again. The General Assembly is back. And lobbying in this new climate in COVID times has definitely been challenging. It's a different world for us all, from the elected officials to lobbyists to constituents. Everyone is trying to get used to adapting to the changes that we've had to make up there. But we're certainly thankful for our relationships that we have with our elected officials and staff that have really allowed us to adapt to all these changes. And we thank all the members that are active in the process and are keeping in touch with your elected officials as well, because that certainly helps us to get our jobs done up at the State House. So jumping into session very quickly, we are 3 weeks into the first regular session of the 124th South Carolina General Assembly. This means that any piece of legislation that was introduced last year is dead. We've started over fresh this year. The House and Senate have met for 2 weeks in Columbia. They've met 1 week virtually. The session looks a lot different, but as far as the work of the bodies for the first couple of weeks, it's been pretty run of the mill, with the addition of course, discussing the vaccine distribution and COVID response. That's taken up a lot of the House and Senate's time to begin with this year. The Senate, very briefly, has started on their heartbeat bill that is passed out of subcommittee. Passed out of the Senate and is headed to the House, where they had their first subcommittee hearing on it yesterday. The House is focused a lot more on COVID dollar allocation and beginning discussions on Santee Cooper and preparing to allow the Ways and Means Committee to start working on the state budget, because right now we're working off a continuing resolution. So everyone is trying to get ready to make sure that we have an actual budget moving forward for 2021-2022. Following an interrupted 2020 session, obviously due to COVID-19, the General Assembly has been faced with so many lingering issues. They've got Santee Cooper still hanging out there, like I just mentioned, the budget, on top of conducting all the regular business of the state. And then they've also got to work through redistricting this year. So while the session is wildly different than it has been before, I just want to let everyone know that SCR continues to represent you at the State House, and we are ensuring that realtor priorities are heard by our lawmakers while also being sensitive to the current environment that we're in. Lots of meetings are being held virtually, but we are in attendance at all of those, and we're actually able to testify virtually in those meetings that are held online. So that has been nice. So at least that everyone is still able to participate in the process when we can't be there in person. A little bit about our legislative agenda. The South Carolina Realtors Legislative Committee has set an agenda to address updating our criminal background check criteria to include Social Security-based background checks to accompany the fingerprints. We're working with the South Carolina business community as a whole to support the passage of hate crimes legislation. We're looking to extend the moratorium to prohibit petroleum pipeline companies from using eminent domain. We're trying to address housing discrimination through supporting the removal of discriminatory covenants and restrictions. And then hopefully, if time allows this year, we're going to look to get some electronic notarization legislation filed. That's going to help provide for some more seamless closings and kind of eliminating that gap in the recording process. One piece of legislation I did want to note specifically regarding real estate is S-158. This is a bill by Senator Scott from Columbia. His bill essentially would reinsert language from previous license law that allows brokers and agents that are 65 or older to be exempt from taking continuing education, but it adds in the caveat that the broker would have to be 65 and have 25 years of experience in South Carolina. This bill is not going to impact any partial waivers that are currently being granted. It's going to be supplemental to what's already in place. So this bill has gone through subcommittee last week, went through full committee last week, and it's currently on the Senate calendar. So that kind of concludes my report for today. Stay tuned in the coming weeks. My video updates will be back soon as some of our priority issues get moving. And I will definitely keep y'all posted on any other legislation of interest. And as I'm sure many of you know, things happen very quickly at the State House. So please feel free to reach out if you need any further information as we move forward into the legislative session. I can certainly put my email in the chat box, and please feel free to call me or shoot me an email. But with that, I'm going to head back over to the State House to see what's going on over there. But thank you so much again for having me today, and I'm going to kick it over to Austin for his regulatory update.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thank you, everyone, for having us here this morning. I'm going to touch on a few issues that we're seeing on the legal hotline with the association and then with the Real Estate Commission. The Real Estate Commission is still having their regularly scheduled meetings. They are being conducted via video conferencing, but they are still having their regular application and disciplinary hearings. The biggest thing that will be of note to you coming from the Real Estate Commission is a reminder that if you are renewing this year, this is the first year of the fingerprinting. So you will be required to get a fingerprint done. That information will be coming to you with your renewal package. You will have to essentially go through their required provider to get the fingerprint. And if you go to somewhere else, it still has to go through that provider. So don't proactively try to get ahead of it and get your fingerprinting done. Make sure you go through that process and that you do that in a timely fashion. The next thing I want to mention is as the staff liaison for Forms Committee to kind of put on your radar that there are some forms changes that were approved last year. We expect that those will be launched in a few weeks with some explanatory videos and on our website, and generally then have about a 30-day viewing period for that. At that point, if you have any questions, certainly reach out to us on the hotline, and maybe you're going to look at the possibility of doing some local or regional events to go over those. Just to kind of put them on your radar, the forms that are changing is 504, which is our buyer sale contingency, 505, which is the companion document for that, the release agreement form 518, and then the vacant land contract 330, which was mostly updated to reflect the changes that were made to 300 and 310, the sales contract in 2020. And then there are a few minor changes in the listing of the main contract as well at that point. The one change that was made last year that you have already probably been aware of is including the new stuff for clear cooperation. So if you are using a SCR listing agreement form 220, that's going to be in paragraph 13. A reminder that your seller needs to choose either to publicly market the property and therefore puts the property in the MLS within the required time period, or they need to make it a brokerage exclusive. If you do a brokerage exclusive, both the brokerage firm and the seller are limited from doing any public marketing. So that includes site signage, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, emailing anybody else. Essentially, the rule I give is as soon as someone outside of your brokerage calls you and asks you about your listing on 123 Main Street, it ceases to be a brokerage exclusive, and now you need to make it option 1. So make sure that your seller is aware that if you're choosing option 2, the only people who are going to know about this are the individuals within the brokerage firm. If you have any questions as far as the timelines or guidelines for your individual MLS. Make sure you're talking to that MLS, since the form essentially has in there multiple times that you need to check with your local MLS, but make sure your seller is abundantly clear of the difference between option 1 and option 2, and that if they choose to do option 2, that it really is only to the individuals within that brokerage firm, that they cannot do any public marketing outside whatsoever. Then I want to kind of cover, lastly, 2 of the main things we're seeing more on the hotline, especially given the times, and those are involving, one is involving hot markets and talking about multiple offers, and then I have sort of an ethics thing related to COVID. So the first thing is multiple offers are completely allowed. A seller, when they receive multiple offers, can do a number of things. They can reject all of them. They can accept one of them. They can encounter one of them. Or they can, do a rejection and a solicitation of new offer to everyone. That's sort of the highest and best option. A reminder that if your seller is rejecting an offer, they need to use the offer rejection form that is required by SCR by LLR. So if you see that, if that's the form that is the LLR logo in the left-hand corner, make sure that if you're rejecting an offer by outright rejection or by expiration, that needs sense. So if you are highest and best, so if Lindsay, Byron, and Nick all send my seller an offer, and my seller says, hey, let's do highest and best to all of them, I'm actually going to send Lindsay, Byron, and Nick all 3 an offer rejection form, as well as a solicitation new offer saying, hey, my ideal new offer is at this price, this closing date, this repair option, etc. And then if I end up accepting Nick's offer, I'm going to send a second rejection offer to Byron and Lindsay if they have sent me a second offer there. Your seller, is completely up to your seller whether or not they choose to reveal that there have been multiple offers. That is something that you as a listing agent want to talk to them about the pros and cons of both. I recommend getting that instruction from them of whether you can or cannot disclose that in writing, so it can later not be said that you kind of made the decision on your own. But if an offer has been accepted, you do, under the Code of Ethics, have to disclose an accepted offer. But sort of if there are multiple offers out there, that is sort of up to the seller whether they wish to disclose that or not. Make sure that you're presenting all offers in a timely fashion, objectively, as quickly as possible. And if you are rejecting them, use that offer rejection form. And then the last thing I'll cover with COVID is a few of the Code of Ethics issues we're seeing more with COVID. So there are several times in the Code of Ethics, both in Article 1 and in Article 12, where essentially you cannot allow someone into the property on terms other than those granted by the seller. So prior to 2020, the main ways we saw this were people who decided to use a beach house or a lake house as their own private vacation spot, or letting in a buyer or an inspector prior to what was allowed. What we're seeing now is, if a seller says, hey, everyone who enters my house for a showing must be wearing a mask, shoe booties, gloves, you better make sure that every single person is wearing masks, shoe booties, and gloves. If the seller has said, hey, due to CDC guidance, we are limiting the number of individuals that can see a property at a particular time, or anyone who sees the property must get permission ahead of time, make sure you are following that rule. For no other reason than obviously the public safety and common decency reasons. More and more sellers now have cameras. They will take a picture or a video of you being in the property, not wearing a mask, not wearing gloves. They will simply send us the MLS rules showing that you were to wear gloves or a mask in the property at all times, then send a screenshot of you not wearing a mask, and that's sort of an open and shut ethics case. We are reminded that you guys have now signed a cooperative agreement with SCR. So SCR is now handling all of your ethics and arbitration matters. So you can now file with us, and don't have to worry about individuals in the community being involved. We will get a neutral panel from across the state. And with that, I also want to remind you that I am doing an ethics class for your local board on March the 2nd. If you are on our statewide professional standards or grievance committee, you need to attend this one or one at another local board. But certainly it is open to everyone, especially if you want to get that 2.5 hours of education that required by NAR. If there's nothing for me, I will go ahead and hand that over to Byron.
Thank you, Austin. Thanks, President Steve. Thanks, Executives Kim and Taylor. Byron King, I'm an attorney with Austin. Our job is to try to keep you from getting sued, facing ethics or license law complaints. So some reasons to listen to the next couple minutes. Some things I'm going to talk about is about story that relates to you, talking about low inventory around the state. President Morris shared with us he had a buyer interested in a price range, and there was only 4 houses in Columbia that was in that price range. So we're starting to see things on the hotline related to low inventory. And Austin touched on some of the multiple offer issues, but some other issues that are related when you're soliciting, trying to get listings. Be careful about do not call laws. Make sure you're up to date with do not call. You have to check the registry, make sure people are not on the do not call registry before you telephone them. You need to maintain a list with your brokerage, check and make sure you're not making calls on the telephone and getting yourself into trouble. Nick shared an article this morning about a brokerage that's been sued about do not call. So this is a serious matter on the solicitation end with short inventory. So make sure you're checking on the do not call registry. And professionalism, that's our number 1 hotline issue. It shows up in low inventory with realtors, cutting corners, trying to find listings, breaking the do not call laws, trying to use text messaging to try to, instead of being more formal with emails or telephone conversations to each. On the selling side, making sure that you're doing disclosure. That's another top 5 on the legal hotline issue. And be careful about using as is on the buyer side. If you're trying to make your offer look good to a seller, use highest and best price, use due diligence. But as is has some risk for a buyer. So be very careful with as is. Also talked about the MLS. One thing that we're also seeing with short inventory are house flippers. So you may be trying to list a house flipper. The usual house flipper, somebody gets a contract on a house and then tries to remarket that contract to make some money. So make sure you know what you're doing. Talk to your broker in charge. Call the legal hotline. I'll put up the legal hotline number for the realtor hotline. And make sure that you're using an attorney that's done some closings on with a house flipper. And if you haven't done a house flip listing, make sure you want to associate maybe a colleague from your brokerage to help you with it as you kind of learn on the job. And that kind of wraps up some of the top issues with low inventory. And I'll post the legal hotline number and our emails to me and Austin in the chat. And as a reminder, you can contact us, and we also have a tech hotline.
Hey, Byron, there are a couple of questions in the chat. Bev Ryan asks an interesting question regarding letters that are submitted along with offers. We call those quote unquote love letters, where buyers try to convince the sellers to sell to them. And she asks, what are the concerns or recommendations regarding these types of letters in regards to possible fair housing issues and maybe other problems associated with those? What do you recommend?
Right. So short answer and long answer. Short answer, do not use love letters. Do not use love letters for fair housing discrimination reasons. Long answer, you heard Todd Beckstrom touch on Article 10, can't discriminate in real estate services based on the protected classes. A love letter where you're describing, the typical love letter is, I could see myself on Christmas morning, the kids running down the stairs into the living room of your lovely house. We really want this house. If the seller doesn't sell that house to that person, they could argue, well, I was discriminated against because I have children. It's a familial status fair housing violation. I was discriminated because I was a Christian. I mentioned Christmas in my letter. And there could be other things in that love letter that touch on protected classes. So the short answer is do not use them. Make your highest and best offer, as Austin was talking about, with your highest and best price, due diligence, short due diligence, some other terms. If you already sold your house, you don't need to sell a house. Anything to make your offer more enticing to a seller in a multiple offer situation, but do not use love letters due to the fair housing discrimination risks.
Thank you, Byron. The other question from another realtor asks if you can record visitors in your house. Now, I'm guessing by visitors, he means potential buyers and not just general visitors to the house. With a lot of our houses being connected with technology and security and surveillance systems, can buyers and buyer agents assume they're being recorded when they're walking in, and do they need any type of disclosure?
Right.
Yes.
So short answer, I'll flip it to Austin in a second for the forums, but the short answer is surveillance systems are everywhere. They're small, undetectable. So always, always, always assume you're under surveillance. That means behave in the listings, tell your buyer consumers to behave in the listing, and Don't talk about the property when you're inside the house because somebody may be listening. We've had reports where buyers made derogatory comments about the house and it hurt them in a multiple offer situation. So always assume you're under surveillance, behave in listings. Do not talk about the property when you're in there. If you need to communicate, maybe use a notepad or text each other. Wait till you're off site in your cars away from the property to talk about the property because the seller may be listening. On the seller's side, sellers need to talk to their lawyer about surveillance issues. Some of the laws haven't really caught up to the current surveillance systems that are everywhere. That means no cameras in bathrooms for expectations of privacy. And there's eavesdropping, voyeur laws that all can be violated. And I'll flip it to Austin, who's been working with the Forms Committee on this issue for a number of years.
Yeah, so this issue is covered in both your buyer agency and your listing agreement if you use SCR forms. So the buyer agency agreement, the last paragraph in it, it tells the buyer you're going to assume that you're being recorded in every home you go into. So we're going to do what Byron said. Have any communications offsite. I do remind people offsite does not mean the front or backyard because people have outdoor cameras as well. And on the listing agreement, the broker essentially asks the seller, can I disclose that there are cameras on the property? Absent the seller having a really good reason due to maybe some family situation, being in law enforcement, etc., we recommend, hey, putting a sign when at the beginning of, at a showing that just says, hey, smile, you're on camera or something like that. Don't put it in the MLS remarks because people don't want that necessarily out there in the general public. But if the seller does not want them to disclose it, the broker cannot disclose, but the seller is liable for knowing all the rules and regulations regarding recording or surveillance. Any of those questions need to be directed to legal counsel. Don't advise them on that whatsoever. If they have any questions on that, they need to talk to counsel.
So a couple of follow-ups real quick and we'll move on. But what should a listing agent do, Byron, if they receive a love letter along with an offer? Should they just tell the buyer's agent that they're not going to submit that to the seller?
Right, that's an excellent question. Here's what I would recommend on anything professionalism, because a lot of people don't know, right? They may not have been on this meeting. They may not read the articles. So first thing you do is you want to have a conversation with that buyer agent. Hey, I was on a CCRA quarterly meeting. I heard the state lawyers talking about love letters. There can be some fair housing issues for me and for you with these love letters. So I would, just highly discourage you from sending that love letter. If that doesn't work, maybe have the brokers in charge talk. They send it to you anyway. Maybe put it in the file, have a conversation with your seller. Hey, seller, I want you to give me a direction not to present any of these quote unquote love letters due to fair housing issues, that sellers will just consider the offers on their merits of the offers themselves.
Yeah, my take is that there's no legal obligation to forward a love letter, and you should establish an office policy on how you're going to handle those when they come in.
Nick, if I could,
sure.
Katie Johnson at NAR during Professional Standards said that always focus on the offer and not on the people. So if you get those letters, just let the other agent say you cannot. This is about your offer. It's not about the people. We could have a potential fair housing issue for all of us if we present this letter and not to present it. So that was the direction from Katie at Professional Standards on the national level.
That's a good point. One last thing about recording. A member asked, can recording of a showing open sellers or agents to discriminatory claims? Now, everything's got to be put in context, right? If you are putting in recording equipment only to record potential buyers of your property, then yeah, that could very well lead to some problems down the line. If this is part of your general security system and you're always recording, you always have cameras on, certainly good things can be used for bad purposes, but generally no. Surveillance systems are not going to automatically be a de facto cause for or reason for discriminatory behavior. So keep things in context and make sure that your sellers understand that their bottom line is the offer that's being presented. The amount of money they're making is the goal. So let's, I think that wraps up the questions. Byron will put his email address in the chat and we'll be able to handle any other hotline questions off the call. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I think we actually got tons of questions, and we'll also make sure we send those, pass it along to the SCR legal team. So we just wanted to kind of move on, and we are very fortunate to have Morris Lyles, our 2021 SCR president, and also you've already heard Nick Kermitis, Chief Executive Officer, here to discuss the 2020 successes and SCR's goals for 2021.
Thank you, Kim. I am so happy to be here with my home team. I'm so happy to be here with our group here in Columbia, and I love working with all of you. And just want to talk a little bit today about what we've been doing this year, sort of what we've got on tap for this year. And I know we've already kind of touched on a little bit about the Capital Conference coming up next week. If you haven't registered, I will remind you once more to register. It's cc.screaltor.org. So if Nick, if you'll put that in the chat for everybody too. Some things that I wanted to talk about last year in South Carolina, we closed over 100, I think it was 101,500 transactions, which in history, that is the most, that's the largest number of transactions that we've ever recorded. So that's huge. People are wanting to move to South Carolina. We're seeing a huge amount of people want to come to South Carolina, and the word's out. So, be aware of that as people move here. They need explanations of how South Carolina works sometimes, and sort of walk through those steps with them. But that's a huge year, and a huge year considering everything else that's going on. So really good news along those lines. 2021 is off to a great start. We're seeing contracts in a lot of markets be 30 to 40% higher than they were this time last year. So, please, let's stay busy. Let's keep working and stay safe. All of our South Carolina data, some of this data that I'm mentioning, can be found at screaltors.org/market reports. So, use that in your listing presentations, use it when you're helping to price property, those kind of things. And I think it's very valuable information for you. Of course, the success of the vaccine rollout is going to be very big as we look at 2021 and sort of how things move forward. The economy, we need the vaccine to be rolled out. We need everybody to get vaccinated. We need these things to really pick up so that we can all work safely and shop safely. If you guys, I know a lot of you on this call, I looked through the list and I know most of the names on there, but a lot of you have gone through a lot of extra education as far as getting your CRS, your GRI. NAR now has something called the Commitment to Excellence program, which is actually a free program, which is great. If you haven't, though, if you've not done this, I urge you to look at these programs. I consider a lot of these programs as how I've been successful in the business. I think a lot of other people that have gone through these programs would say the same thing. It is more important than ever for us to differentiate ourselves from outside factors. You've got Amazon wanting to get in our business. You've got Costco wanting to get in the business. You've got Walmart, whoever it is wanting to try to get a foothold in our real estate business. The best way to counter that is to make ourselves better by taking these classes to learn more about the business and how you can help your clients better. And these portals will continue to compete with traditional services. They'll never replace a well-educated realtor that makes a connection with a client and builds trust with that client. The best way to do that is by the knowledge that you have of the process and being able to guide our clients confidently and, with their largest purchase that they'll ever make. And lastly, I want to, tell everybody to be safe out there. We've had, a number of deaths of realtors due to COVID. And, we don't want to lose any more, and we want to see y'all in person soon, and not and everybody to be well. So please be safe out there, and I just want to thank y'all for having me come today. And have enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing everybody face to face soon. Thanks, Kim.
Nick.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with everyone. I know we're already into February, right? But I'm going to wish you a happy new year anyway. Hope your new year is off to a great start, healthy and prosperous times ahead, I believe. All of our economic data shows that the momentum that we had in 2020 is going to carry into this year, and that certainly by the second half of the year, I think the rest of the economy is going to start catching up with some of the growth and viability that we've seen in the real estate market. Mark Vittner, who is an economist for, is it Bank of America? I can't remember.
I think it's Wells Fargo.
That's
Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo. Sorry, Mark. Commented just recently just how robust and how much of a load of the economy that the real estate industry has carried on its back over the last 9 months now. So before I jump into a couple of remarks, we had one question in the chat about the DOJ NAR lawsuit settlement, and I wanted to address that real quick. NAR is currently in negotiation with the Department of Justice in discussion of certain MLS rules regarding primarily buyer agency compensation. Now, most of you, I would assume, belong to the CMLS. It's an independent MLS, not subject to NAR's rules and policies, but these are some things that may trickle down, may impact your MLS in the near future. So it's important to know whether you're a member of a realtor MLS or a member of an independent MLS. And while the final language hasn't been settled yet, then this could take a few more months before we see the final wording. But it's most of what NAR is talking with the DOJ about is already in our code of ethics. First and foremost, you're going to start seeing the co-broke compensation that's offered to buyer agents is going to start being publicly listed on the IDX feeds. I know RE/MAX and other companies have already announced that they're going to start doing this, and you're going to see this much more broad-based across the board when the final rule is implemented. You're also going to see a change in the rule where you can't search the MLS by co-broke compensation. There's two national lawsuits out, class action lawsuits out in the Midwest that have been filed against a number of real estate firms and MLSs and NAR that contend that there are buyer's agents that aren't showing the full inventory to their buyer clients, and they're weeding out properties that aren't paying as much compensation as others. That's definitely a no-no. You're not fulfilling your fiduciary duty to your buyer client if you do that. And the new policy will stop that and prevent that from happening. Also, one of the rules changes are going to prohibit buyer's agents from claiming that they work for free. They can't claim that their services are free to buyers. They've got to have a meaningful explanation of how they're either going to be compensated through the transaction, through an offer of co-broke cooperating compensation, or from the buyer directly. And the final rule change has to do with lockbox access, and that non-member participants of an MLS, there's going to have to be a system to allow them to show the property. And I know many MLSs have one-time showing codes, individual listing appointments that can be made. This shouldn't be a real game changer for the industry, but it is going to be codified in a new MLS rule going forward. We will probably see the final rules by April, and I expect the NAR Board of Directors to have something to vote on to approve at their May meetings. I will put my email address and and my phone number in the chat. And please feel free to reach out to me if you need any more details on any of this. Morris mentioned briefly how important the rollout of the vaccine is to our state, our economy, and not only the physical health of our economy, but the mental health of our community. We were able to confirm earlier this month that realtors are in phase 1C of DHEC's plan to roll out the vaccine. Currently, there are two phases. It's phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 has 3 phases in it, and we're currently getting ready to initiate phase B, and next will be phase C, which should be late spring. Now, this isn't something I'm going to ask everyone to show some restraint. Please don't go on Facebook and brag that realtors are in phase 1C. We are one of dozens of essential business industries that are included in phase 1C. And there are lots of folks who are at risk, who are elderly, with vaccine shortages still kind of choking up the supply line. I don't want anyone thinking that we lobby to jump ahead of the line of anybody else. And we're just one of many of those essential businesses. That was part of the work that we did last year. It carries forward into this year's rollout of the vaccine. And I'm hopeful that, pretty soon we'll be talking about a post-COVID atmosphere. And some of the things that we're thinking about, just so you know, and some of the things you as brokers should be thinking about. Are you going to require your staff to be vaccinated to come to the office? Are you going to require your agents to be vaccinated as part of your real estate team? Are associations going to require proof of vaccination to attend an in-person meeting or to travel to a conference or to get on an airplane? These are questions that are being debated all over the country right now, which is why COVID liability protection is so critical. That's being debated at the State House right now and and in Washington in Congress. There have already been hundreds of lawsuits filed across the country against small businesses, claiming that unsafe conditions, which resulted in employees and customers and clients testing positive for COVID. Businesses cannot withstand that kind of liability. Certainly isn't covered by any current insurance. And we need that protection as we move toward a post-COVID future. So lots of questions that are still lingering that we're going to have to deal with. There's also a couple of things that I just wanted to say this afternoon. One is to say thank you. There are realtors on the call today. I know Franklin Jones and Joe and Sally and a ton of others that have been sharing our Facebook posts, that have been sharing our social media contacts and information, which helps get the right information out to our members. There has been so much misinformation that's posted on social media, and it's so hard to reel that back in once it gets out there. And if there was any favor I would ask of y'all today is that when you see a post from SCR, from CCRA, share those posts. Use your circle of influence to get the word out to the public that we serve, to our members, so that they know that we're a trusted source of information and that they get the facts straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And in along the lines of social media, can we practice a little kindness in 2021? And I know that seems a little simple and a little silly, but in the last 12 months, whether it was because of politics or social media or whatever else was kind of COVID and everything else that was just building tensions in us as people and as a country, we were so quick to point a finger at somebody. And, if somebody misquotes a statistic online, they didn't make a mistake, they're a liar. If somebody says something that was factually incorrect, but later was updated, that's the kind of behavior that, as realtors, we don't need to add to that. We need to help tamper that down and bring some reasonableness back to our communities. And we can be seen as that voice of reason and calm in our respected communities. And I think practicing a little kindness and following the golden rule, which Todd and Morris have mentioned today, I think will go a long way to continuing to build the reputation of the Realtor brand, to increase our professionalism, and continue our position as the trusted advisors and counselors of real estate in South Carolina. And the last thing, I think I've got one more minute. The last thing I would say is invest in your success in this year. Morris said, invest in yourself through education. And there's no better investment that you can make and that is in yourself. And the other investment I would ask you to make is that, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your perspective, we are conducting a lot more business this way, virtually, online, through Zoom and other social platforms. How many of you would invite a client, a customer, a first-time buyer to meet you in a dark alley behind a restaurant on Main Street? Nobody would do that, right? That's silly. But so many of us have our Zoom setups where we're sitting in the dark, we've got the camera pointed up at the ceiling, or we're dressed in our pajamas, and I am wearing pants today, by the way. But it is so surprising to me that so many realtors whose image and reputation and professionalism don't come across on a Zoom call. And it's simply a matter of having a light, maybe turning, to face a window instead of having a window behind you, raising your camera up so that you're looking straight into it and nobody's looking, up your nose. Little things that you can do that can transform your professionalism and increase your brand reputation when you're conducting these meetings. You put a lot of time and effort, I know, into your marketing, your branding. Your office space is meticulous. I know how careful you are about all of that. I would ask you to apply those same principles to your online presence, and I think you can build on your success in this coming year. So with that, I'm going to thank you. Thank you for your support and look forward to serving you in 2021. Taylor and Kim are two colleagues that I trust, that I share all of our work at SCR. Kim, as you heard, is chairing the AE committee this year. And as such, she and I will be working very closely together on issues that impact the state and our local association executives. And I can't think of a better leader for that position. I look forward to serving y'all in 21. Thank you, President Steve, for having our team on the call today.
Well, thank you, Nick. It's been very informative. And Morris, thank you for being involved today and for your service. And we look forward to 2021. The whole SCR team has shared great information in this meeting. So I'm sure everybody has benefited from that. So Kim, I think I'm supposed to wrap things up here and remind folks of upcoming events, and feel free to, Kim and Taylor, to jump in and help me if I misstate something. But again, thanks for everyone being here, participating in these meetings, helps our profession and CCRA. A big thing coming up is the Circle of Excellence. It's fast approaching, so everybody get ready for that. This only award that recognizes a member's production and their participation in CCRA. This is an exclusive award that a select few achieve. You have to have 60,000 in GCI and 10,000 participation points in the association. So it's a great thing for individuals and for the association together. I think Monday, February 8th is the deadline to submit your applications for Circle of Excellence. I think Friday, March 26th will be the gala. It is scheduled for that time. There's limited participation, so be sure and get signed up by that deadline. I think that takes care of most of the details for that, right, Kim? Okay. Then thanks to the board of directors of CCRA, all continuing education is free. That has been a big thing that was added last year and this year. We are continuing our partnership with Gary Pickren. We'll continue in 2021. We have a Tuesday, February 23rd from 12:30 to 4:30. He'll be holding the CE for the mandatory course, Walk Through the Law. So everyone be aware of that. If you have not seen the National Association's annual legislative meeting in Washington, D.C., it will be virtual again in 2021, May 3 through 14. And you'll get posts from CCRA of how to join that. We were hoping it would be live, but a little too early for that on that one. So we have many other events scheduled throughout the year. I'm going to be pushing Kim and Taylor really hard to make sure we make that golf tournament in September, a live event, and other things as well. So thank you again for everybody participating today. Thank you, our panelists. Thank you, our guests. And Kim, if you and Taylor don't have anything else, we will adjourn.